You know, numbers and statistics can only tell you so much about a disease like cancer. To really get it, to understand its true impact, you need more than data. You need stories. So for World Cancer Day, we're going to step inside that experience through the words of a poet who watched this disease court her own mother.
The thief in the night. That's what the award-winning poet LindaAnn LoSchiavo calls carcinoma. Just think about that phrase for a second. It perfectly captures that feeling of stealth, of violation, that sense that something incredibly precious has just been stolen from you. It's the perfect way to begin her story.
And that story comes from this book, Cancer Courts My Mother. Now, this isn't some medical textbook. It's a book of poetry that actually turns the disease into a character, giving it a personality and a motive. And this idea of personifying cancer, it's haunting for sure. But as you'll see, it's also an incredibly powerful way to understand what's happening.
So, where does a story like this begin? Well, it doesn't start with the illness. It starts with the person. To really get what was lost, we first have to meet the woman she was before this uninvited and very deceptive guest showed up.
The poem starts by painting this picture of a woman who's just full of life. And the words are so specific, so full of love. Dimpled opal arms. It immediately sets up this image of health and vitality. A woman who is clearly cherished.
And then there's this line. It tells you everything about her spirit. She wasn't just a physical presence. She was sharp, she was witty, her personality was literally crackling with static. It makes her feel so real, you know, like someone you might have known.
And with this last, really intimate detail, the portrait is complete. These 3 short phrases give us such a vivid snapshot of this woman, just brimming with life and character. And all of this, it just makes what happens next that much more heartbreaking. And then he arrives. See, in the poem, cancer isn't a random mutation. It's a character, a two-faced suitor. This metaphor is really the heart of the whole story. And think about that. It's actually a pretty powerful way to cope, isn't it? By giving this abstract terror a face, it becomes something you can actually confront. He seems charming, but his intentions are purely sinister. He doesn't ask, he takes.
And that's what's so incredibly powerful here, the contrast. The poem gives us this romantic, almost gothic metaphor of a suitor, but the reality? It's cold, it's clinical, urothelial carcinoma. When you strip away all that poetry, you're left with the real name of the villain in this story.
You know, every story has that moment, that turning point where everything just changes, and the hidden truth finally comes out into the light. In this poem, it's called a quiet violation, and it all goes down on what should have been a totally ordinary morning.
So, up to this point, this suitor has been kind of working in the shadows, right? He's been courting the mother, weakening her, but his real power hasn't been seen yet. The poem really builds the tension here, asking that question, when is he finally going to show his hand?
And the scene that's set is just so gentle, so normal. A daughter's simple act of love, bringing in a plant, just trying to make her mom smile. It's this beautiful, tender moment, right before everything falls apart.
And then, there it is. In just one devastating line, the entire world shifts. The suitor's quiet violation, it's not quiet anymore. It's right there, written on her skin for everyone to see. This is the moment it all becomes real.
I mean, you can just feel the weight of that moment, can't you? The shock, the vulnerability. It's a picture of that awful realization that the fight has just entered a whole new and much more visible phase.
So, after a discovery like that, things start moving fast. The story is hurtling towards its end. The suitor, he's claimed his prize, and now the story moves into its final, heartbreaking stage.
This line from the poem just perfectly captures what comes next. All that energy, that crackling static we heard about before, it's just gone. It's been replaced by this heavy, oppressive silence, a shadow that has taken over everything.
Wow. The way the poem describes cancer's victory is just brutal. It's not just a win, it's a smug, self-satisfied kind of victory. That image, a cat licking the cream, it's such an everyday thing, but in this context, it's just so cruel and chilling.
And here's where the poem shows us the physical reality behind that yellowed skin. The suitor's sinister seeds had spread to her liver. This wasn't some slow decline. It was a fast, overnight takeover. The disease had finally and completely taken control. And this is how it ends. The woman whose sarcasm once crackled is now silent. She's a vassal, basically a servant, in the palace of death that cancer built inside her. Her voice, her very essence, it's gone.
Look, a story this personal, this painful, it's tough to hear. But honestly, this is exactly why we have World Cancer Day. It's about taking these individual stories of loss and turning them into a collective reason to act.
That phrase from the poem, that quiet violation, it becomes more than just a line in a story. It becomes a kind of rallying cry. We honor the people who were taken, and we recognize the deep injustice of how they were taken.
And that's really the whole point, right? To take that personal grief and turn it into something bigger. It means we stand with the families, like the daughter in this poem. We remember the vibrant lives that were lost, and we use that memory to fuel the fight.
And that really leaves us with one last big question to think about. We just walked through a diagnosis of urothelial carcinoma, not by reading a medical chart, but by reading a poem. It didn't give us charts or numbers, but it gave us something maybe even more important: empathy. So you have to ask yourself, how can these kinds of stories change not just how we feel about a disease, but how we actually go about fighting it?